Alright, welcome back to the DuckHill workshop. My name is Ben, and this is part 2 of building the live edge desk for my mom. Right now I am laying out all of our pieces, or all of the pieces, on the 3 boards, the lumber that I have. I have 3 wide boards that are between 6.5 and 8 inches long, or wide, and where are they at? Just over 105 inches long. And so now I'm laying out each of my individual pieces because it's easier, once you break them down into shorter lengths, it's easier than to rip them to width instead of trying to waste a bunch of stuff ripping long thin strips. So yeah, I'm going to do all my layout. I've got a little bit of a suspicion right now that I might not have enough lumber to make all of the cabinet right now, but that just means that I need to take a trip out to the gardens and pick up another board. So be it. But alright, well, that being said, let's get to it and see how it turns out. Okay, so as I've been laying this out, I've quickly realized, as I mentioned earlier, that I definitely don't have enough ash to pull off all of the parts and pieces of the cabinet for the desktop, or for the built-in desk. So what I'm actually going to do is so we're doing rail-in style panels on the side cases, and I'm going to drop those down. Instead of doing ash for the panels, I'm going to use, I have a little bit of spalted maple left over here at the house. I have a lot more at Glenn's, but I have some here. So now I'll dig that out of the snow since third winter is here. I'll bring that inside, let it dry off. Hopefully it won't twist and warp too much, but it's thick, so I'll be able to resaw it down into smaller panels. And then I'm also going to use the spalted maple for the 4 drawer fronts. And then probably the pull-out desk extension as well. That means I should be able to then get all of my leg components, rail and stiles, and then I should be able to get every piece now that I need out of the ash that I have. So thankfully, nothing like mid-design plans, but that's why it's really important to lay out, when you have boards, lay out what your pieces are. Some people will actually even make like MDF templates of each piece that they need to cut out, so they know, they just lay it down and can mark it. I haven't done that. I've just been going off of my dimensions off my cut list and measuring it out on the board so that I can start breaking it down. But that highlights like, oh crap, especially when you're working, here I'll show you some stuff. You start marking out like knot holes or bark inclusion or checks or cracks, or actually I have a bit of pith in the middle of some of these boards, so I'll show you that right now. Alright, you can see right here that I have some pith inclusion that shows up on the other side as well. So I've actually poked some holes in this with my pencil. You see, this is the center of the tree and it's just really soft fiber. You don't want that in your boards. Now you see I've got this all X'd out, even though this is nice like quarter sawn grain. What I also have that you can't see very well is cracking, which is pretty common at the pith. And this runs the whole length of this board, so I'm actually taking out a good chunk, cutting away some of that waste, which is, again, like I said, unfortunate. The grain's really nice through here. I have that on several other boards as well. Look at like, there This could be caused by a number of things. Most likely this is just drying stresses. Could also be caused by the stress of falling the tree. But that's what happens when you dry your own lumber. Okay, so I showed you those bark inclusions, the pith, the stress or drying cracks. Now what I'm going to do is I still have a little tweaking, but I've got so much stuff scrawled across here that I need to clear out some of the parts and pieces. So what I am going to do is take off the pieces that have been designated as legs. So I'm going to cut those on the miter saw, and then I'll be able to deal with these, what I have left, a little bit more cohesively. So let's do that. Okay, now that I have my pile, these 4 boards will get cut down into 2-inch widths and then get laminated to make the legs. Each leg is 29 inches long by 1 3/4 inches square. And because each of these boards is just a titch under 3/4 inch, so instead of 0.75, they're like 0.72. So we've got to get to 1 3/4 inches, it's 3 blanks to layer them up, and then they'll get surfaced back down or trimmed back down to width. Now everything else, the side panels, not the side panels, the side rails and stiles for the frame and panel case, the sides of the case are frame and panel. So those are 1 1.25 inches thick, so they only need to be 2 laminations wide. And then, so now I need to get, I think I have all my side rails. I need to get my side stiles in, and then I can start cutting things to width and gluing up. So cool. Alright, so this is nice. I'll actually end up with a little bit of a few pieces left over, which is perfect. And now we're going to finish breaking these down into pieces. Something I don't know if you noticed yet or not is that I'm cutting all of these oversized. So I'll do final trim ups to final length with my crosscut sled on the table saw. So. Alright, now these pieces, this is the legs, this is the rails, and this is the stiles. Obviously the panels are going to come from a different piece of wood. And then this is also, I've got leftovers, which that'll end up being the front of each dust cover between each drawer. Dust cover, I'm not sure if that's the right term. I'll look into that and correct that if I'm wrong. It's just a little frame to help support the cabinet and stabilize that section and support the drawer. So now the next step is just to start ripping them down into smaller pieces. This is kind of a fun part, once you take a big long board and start breaking it down into, like, ninja chopping it down into smaller pieces. It's one of my favorite parts of the project. It also makes me a little bit sad because you take something that was once like giant and majestic and you break it down into these smaller pieces. It's kind of the interesting thing about furniture is you respect and enjoy the material, the tree that it came from, but then you also end up diminishing it in a sense in the hopes of giving it a second life or a new purpose. But let's keep making stuff and chop it all up. Got my afternoon coffee. It's still cold outside. There's lots of work to do. Alright, so now that is all of the pieces for my leg blanks. So each leg is three pieces. That means, so because I'm cutting everything over size, they're 2 inches wide, because our final width is 1 3/4 square. And then we're just over, we're like 2 1/8 inches. Yeah, right on, 2 1/8 inches deep. So that gives us a decent amount of size to work with, and to try and get optimal grain matching. What's really nice is being able to square these up and start to try and line the grain up on the edges, which you'll see, like we have a little bit, the grain kind of starts to run across here. You know, we have nice quarter sawn grain on this face, and then pretty straight grain here, and then at the bottom it starts to run across at the edge there as well. So there's a trick that you can do to get quarter sawn grain on all 4 edges, and that is to cut your blank bigger, and then you mark out the size of your blank, or your actual leg, a little bit more angular inside. But I really, since all 3 of these boards are quarter sawn, I really think we'll be able to just laminate and trim to final length. So I think I'm going to get these into glue while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'll rip down the rest of the material. So cool, we'll do that now. Alright, all the leg blanks are in glue up, and the next thing to do is to cut out the side panel rail and stiles, and they're going to get cut to the same size. So this is kind of a nice thing, even though I'm only going to do a 2-board lamination where the legs were 3, so they went out to 2 inches, and these are only going to be 1.5 inches or so. The final dimension will be 1.25 inches. So I'm going to get those cut down, and then depending on how the glue up goes, I'll either leave it in glue overnight or pop those out and start gluing this. I'll probably leave them overnight based on my experience with my Mox and Vice glue up, that I opened the clamps too soon originally. Oops. So yeah, so that's kind of, I'm going to end on the note of cutting these up, and then next week we'll probably pick up on milling all the silver maple parts and getting that ready. So there again we'll be taking another silver maple board from rough lumber to finished wood. So you can check out this video for the live edge laser trophies, laser engraved trophies that I did last week, to see that process if you want to get a head start. Otherwise we'll be working on that later. So hope you all had a good time, and until next time.